Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Daniel Mullins. He is an indie game developer who makes meta, genre-busting games like Pony Island and the Hex. His latest Video Game Awards nominated game is called Inscryption, which we've talked about a few times on the podcast, and mixes Magic the Gathering, roguelikes, horror, found footage, and ARGs in a way that has become an obsessive experience for both Terry and myself. Welcome to the show, Daniel!
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
You sound like fangirls, but it's true.
Okay, so before we do talk about Inscryption and sort of like your creative side of things, how did you first get introduced to horror, whether it's movies, books, whatever?
Yeah, I think it would be when I was still a kid, but a bit older, and it was like a cool thing to do to go over to a friend's house and watch a horror movie in their basement, kind of. And it was like, no one was fully comfortable with it. Like at that age, I think we were all just like, this is kind of scary, but like we have to pretend it's not to the other kids. And so I think I was in like grade 7 or 6 or 7 or so. And like, I remember watching like The Ring, The Grudge. I think The Grudge was the one that actually scared me the most. But even then I didn't find like the standard horror stuff really scared me that much. It's not like I would like I couldn't watch it, or I would go home and it would haunt me later. Maybe I was too old for it at that point or something, or too old to be like super disturbed by it. But yeah, I think that would be the first time I watched horror movies.
Okay. So before that, were those kind of maybe your first horror movies, were your introduction to the genre?
Yeah, I think that would be it as far as I can remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So as a kid, did you like horror after you saw those films, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like the excitement of it. Just and I think at that age, it was like the communal experience of like watching it with a group and like having people be scared. So yeah, I definitely did.
And well, you also said that there are like things like that don't necessarily scare you, but what did scare you as a kid, or were you just like a cool kid that wasn't scared?
No, I mean like I mean it did. It's not like I was like complete like it definitely like the kid in the attic in The Grudge is like nothing to laugh about, but I mean, I
that
found
ruined my life. I saw it as a kid. It ruined my life.
I don't know. I've always found like certain things disturbing that aren't necessarily like labeled horror movies. Like I think certain David Lynch scenes are still the most disturbing thing to me. I think like in Twin Peaks, Bob character, just like every time you see his face, just still freaks me out. It's just something about it, the way it's shot. And then like I think some of the most disturbing scenes I can think of are from David Lynch movies, like in Mulholland Drive, that cafe or where are they, like a diner, yeah. And the guy's remembering his dream, and then it like becomes real, and there's that horrible face behind the wall. I think that's my like number one horrifying scene of all time, even.
Well, that's the best jump scare. When, fun fact, Bonnie Aarons, who plays the nun in The Conjuring, played that character, and it is horrifying. Yeah,
seriously. And I really liked how that creature or thing or person that comes out from behind the wall reappears in Twin Peaks: The Return, that season 3 that was more recent.
Wait, when? Hold on, remind me when.
Well, I thought that those forest like dark people were the same creature or the same.
The God of Light?
No, like the many different dark shadow people who like for instance they resurrect Evil Cooper, but they're in a bunch of scenes too. I could be. I haven't like gone on Reddit and like made sure they're the same, but they really look the same, and I thought they were meant to be, but maybe they're not.
Terry, are you a Twin Peaks person?
I'm out of my depth here. I'm just gonna let the two of you talk about it, nerd out a little bit.
I'm curious then, like how old were you when you were introduced to David Lynch? Were you an appropriate age, or were you a younger person?
I was an appropriate. Well, no. Okay. I was the first time I was exposed was I was way too young, and my grandma was babysitting me, and we watched the David Lynch Dune. Right off the bat, there's some crazy shit that happens right off the bat that I don't even want to say because it's so messed up. And I think we didn't watch very far into it. It was just like my grandma was like, "Oh no, this is bad," and then turned it off. And I was in agreement at the time. So that was
hilarious moment. Yeah. That is the only David Lynch film I've seen.
Okay, yeah. And then the rest was at
Mary
a later
Penn's
age.
giving me looks. It's the only one I've seen.
Okay, whatever. We're not going to go there. We won't get me started on David Lynch movies, but you should watch some. They're really good. Then I'm just curious, like, what was your relationship like with horror outside of watching it with friends? Like, was it something you had in your life, like with books and stuff as a kid, or was it just something that you weren't really like into that much until you started watching them at like birthday parties and stuff?
Just like not an obsession, but like I definitely read a lot of Stephen King books, although my favorite Stephen King book series was The Dark Tower, and it has some horror elements, but it was not that horrifying. So it was kind of like tangentially I was into it, but never like the biggest horror movies or the most popular ones, I guess.
Cool. And with video games, I'm assuming, did you play video games when you were a kid?
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Did you like horror games?
Yeah. I don't think I played many when I was a kid. I think my parents were a little more, for some reason, Grandma was showing me David Lynch Dune, but they were keeping a closer eye on the video games.
Yeah. It's weird for me. I'm 40. Yeah. I'm 41. Well, 41 now. And I remember a time when video games were like just video games. And then I also remember the time when in the 90s when all of a sudden it was like axe down on video games because of Mortal Kombat and because of Night Trap and all this, ridiculousness. And I remember my parents going from being completely blasé about whatever I was playing to like all of a sudden, you can't pick up Night Trap. I saw that on the news. And I'm like, you let me watch rated R movies. Yeah. So it's interesting the way dynamics happen in terms of what kind of content you're allowed to consume. Yeah. Because my parents would let me read any book I wanted to. Yeah. And boy, did I learn a whole lot about everything.
Yeah, that was the same with me.
Books were how I got away with so much stuff. They like had no idea.
Yeah, they don't know what's in them. They're not good. They can't like walk in and see the screen. Like they can read an excerpt, I guess. But,
like you're reading. Yeah. Yes, I'm reading. And there is a lot of sex in this book. Who knew American Psycho had like a lot of a sexual intercourse? But it's wild.
That's just one thing it has in it. Good Lord. But like, what era of video game did you grow up playing? Like, what were your consoles of choice?
Yeah, first I ever got was a Game Boy Color, and I got Pokemon Red and Blue version. Yeah, and that's not.
Oh my god, that was my first, but I got Pokemon Yellow, and I got a purple clear Game Boy Color.
Oh yeah,
that I think I still have.
I think I had that purple
somewhere.
one too. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it was
the coolest.
It was very cool. Yeah, and Pokemon, it wasn't entirely not scary. I mean, there was like the ghost town and and then especially
was it Lavender Town?
Yeah, Lavender Town.
Lavender Town with the ghost tower and the song that everyone was like, "It's cursed.
Yeah.
The haunted Pokemon will come get you." And I was like, "I'm not messing with that shit."
Yeah. Fun fact for Inscryption: when I got Jonah Senzel, the composer, to do the music for the Grimoire Temple in Part 2, I gave him, I said, like, make Lavender Town, basically. Just do that. And that was the only reference I gave because I wanted to give the same kind of spookiness.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. Wow. Now I'm going to go back and listen to that part and think about that.
And then, I got the N64 like a little bit after it had come out. And I was always Nintendo, and so I guess Nintendo isn't known for having it's like some of those early like really good horror games were on the PlayStation, which I never had.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was my parents were very similar. Like we had Nintendo because my mom knew Nintendo and Mario.
Yeah.
But I always played Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube because it wasn't like super scary, but it had ghosts in it, and it was a ghost hunting game, and I played that constantly because it was like scary but cute.
Yeah.
And I still love Luigi's Mansion. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite video games.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I think my introduction to like horror game. I mean, I guess I could look back at like the NES because they did a lot of the Friday the 13th game and that, but they were never really scary. But I think my introduction for me personally to like horror in games was probably the Sega CD because they did a lot of like Night Trap was released on there, and then they did a lot of like those FMV the motion video things like Corpse Killer. And there was like an alien one that I can't think of what its name was off the top of my head, but there was like a whole lot of those type of games that they had released there where it was like, oh, wow, video games can be horror.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing for me as a horror movie kid. It was like a reawakening. Yeah,
it makes sense. I guess that the FMV games would be among the earlier scary ones. It seems like with simpler graphics, it just does seem harder to pull off. But of course, there's plenty of good examples of lo-fi games that still are scary, like Faith recently even.
Yeah, there seems to definitely be a push back into that in terms of, particularly with indie game development, which I love because I as a kid, again, I would play these games and I didn't find them scary, and then I would start looking at people playing through them on YouTube. Now I'm like, oh wow, this is actually kind of creepy, and it's I think it taps into that kind of childhood nostalgia yet fear aspect of it, maybe.
Yeah.
So do you watch horror movies now as an adult?
I do, yeah. It's not like I'm watching every single one that comes out, but I do try to keep up with like what people are saying are good films and like take my friends' recommendations and stuff. So I've seen some of the more recent like horror hits like Midsummer, Hereditary, The Witch, and some of those, and I loved all of them. Can you think of any other good examples of like recent stuff that maybe I've overlooked or something? Or
in the vein of those, I would say like The Dark and the Wicked.
Okay, I don't know where that.
Good. Have you seen The Strangers?
No.
Oh, okay. The guy did The Strangers did it.
Okay.
And if you want to watch something that's like two movies that are dark and just like unrelenting, those two are what movies to watch. They're real good.
Cool.
So.
Yeah.
But then I'm curious about like what kind of games you've been playing. Like, what games do you like to play now? And like, what are some of your favorite, especially in the vein of horror? Like, what are you really into playing?
Well, luckily, in the vein of horror, I have been exploring the Resident Evil series lately. I was kind of I wanted to kind of, after releasing Inscryption, like kind of get back into playing more games because I had been crunching a little bit and hadn't had much time for it. And then I thought it'd be cool to actually like explore a series rather than just like spotty games, and especially one that I like never ever looked at or played at all. So I decided to start with the recent ones, and I did 7 and then 8, and then just recently I finished the Resident Evil 2 remake, And then even after that, I tried the VR version of Resident Evil 4, which was kind of cool, actually. I was surprised.
Yeah, that one looks really cool. I have it's on Quest, right? Oculus Quest. I have it, but like sometimes some of those games, I get really severe motion sickness. And so sometimes
I played 8 in the VR headset.
Oh, really? I didn't even know you could do that. Cool.
Yeah, I played like part of it and it was a nightmare. Like in a good way, but it was a nightmare. Yeah. Because it was just like a lot of things in your face.
Yeah, yeah.
So someone who has never played them until now, what do you think of the Resident Evil games?
I especially like the new ones, and I would like to eventually try playing like the older, like maybe like the original Resident Evil 2 with an emulator or something. Because I'd like to see like how these themes have like carried forward over the years, but I really enjoyed these modern ones. I like, they are scary, but there's a lot more to it than that. Like there's just an enjoyable game at the heart of it, like managing your resources, and it kind of is done at a perfect balance that you're always a little bit stressed out about shooting your last bullet. And
yeah, that game is stressful with that kind of thing. I love 4 when you're the Leon and with like the cult, and it's just so ridiculous. Like 4 and 8.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't play 8 on VR. I played 7. Sorry, I get them all mixed up. Yeah. I forget what numbers, but 4 and 8 were very similar.
Yeah.
See, my favorite is 7, honestly.
I love 7's so good. That was my first Resident Evil game. I didn't play them until 7 came out. Like, I didn't really grow up playing them, so
yeah, I gotta agree, I like 7 the most out of what I've played so far.
Just that opening 90 minutes where like up until like the almost Evil Dead-esque moment where the wife becomes possessed and stuff, it's like that is like a perfectly executed horror experience right there. It's just unrelenting and constantly like ratcheting up the tension.
The menace of like, and I especially remember like just like skulking around the hallway after that dinner. And the father of the family is so menacing. He's just a guy though, but he's like, and he's busting through the wall and like.
So, kind of transitioning to the creative side, how did you get interested in developing video games and doing that kind of programming stuff?
I think it's just something I've always done because of my love of playing them. Like even when I was a kid, I would do before I had any sort of technical or computer skills, just like making cards of, you know, game characters, like little card games that would have like Super Mario characters in them and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually I got into using computers, and I was doing stuff like using Flash to make simple Flash games in that like Newgrounds era, but like never posted any online, and they were even worse than the stuff you'd find there. But and then like stuff like RPG Maker and things where I didn't have to learn how to program. And then I went to school to learn how to program for computer science, and then so I was able to kind of put those like skills with the kind of art and kind of general design skills I already had, and that's how I started.
Wow,
cool.
I'm always like in awe of people that can make video games, because I've played with them my entire life, and I mean, even when playing stuff that's like more scripted, like I tried playing Dreams on the PlayStation or like Little Big Planet, and I had all these ideas of things I wanted to do, and I'm just like, I can't make the pieces fit together. And so whenever I see people making games, I'm just like, it's magic to me. Like, how does Inscryption come to be? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess part of it is I did have a lot of experience going into it, and then it comes to be, I guess, just over like 3 long years of working hard on it. I don't know. Like during the pandemic, I didn't have much else to do, so yeah.
We've talked about Inscryption on the podcast before, so listeners probably know a little bit about it, but can you, in case they have missed those episodes, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what Inscryption is about?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess there's 2 parts of it. It's kind of like what it appears to be at first, and then what it kind of expands into. And so what it appears to be at first is that it's a deck building roguelike, which means you're kind of building a deck of cards over the course of a run, and at the end of the run it resets and you start again. You're in a dark cabin across from a googly-eyed bad guy who talks to you in a deep, synthy, reverby voice.
I love him.
Yeah. And the cards are woodland critters, like stoats, squirrels, wolves. Some of them talk to you and you don't know why. You can stand up from the table and solve puzzles that are in this cabin. And then eventually the puzzles and the card game converge into a certain point, and then something happens, and then there's a lot more.
There's a lot more.
There is a lot more.
Yeah.
It's such a complex game with so many layers. Well, like, I'm saying so many layers, it sounds cheesy, but it's not, because it's like there's a lot going on in this game. So
there's
I'm
a few layers.
Curious, like, just a couple, how you kind of conceived of this game and built out this lore around it, because there's so much going on in the background, in the first part especially, and you're kind of picking up the pieces about what's going on.
Yeah.
So just like, how did that whole idea kind of come about for you, and what was it like to kind of build that world out?
Yeah, I guess it came in a few different stages. Like, the first step came about in a 48-hour game jam that I did. And
cool.
Yeah, so a lot of the like basic parts of part one, like the Leshy, the opponent, the setting, like the visual style, like the woodland critter theme of the cards, was all in that game jam version that was called Sacrifices Must Be Made. And so the first thing I did for the first maybe 8-10 months was expand that into this deck building roguelike with better graphics and the cabin exploration and so on. And then there was one moment where it kind of exploded out, where I had the idea of doing the part two, where the bad guy in part one is just one of 4 of these so-called scribes, which are kind of like a little bit like Pokemon gym leaders, each with their own theme and kind of domain, and they're each a boss. And so I had that idea, and that was where the lore kind of expanded out. And then it made sense at the time that you'd go back to 3D, and then it would be the robot scribe to kind of contrast with the nature of part one. Mm-hmm. And then later on, I had the idea of doing the found footage thing. And I thought that would kind of tie everything together in a really nice way. So I think it could only happen by spending 3 years. It wouldn't come up with it all at once. It kind of evolves.
So, okay, I'm a found footage freak. all I talk about on this podcast is found footage. Yeah. Not actually, but almost everything. Yeah. So Terry was like, Mary Beth, you have to play this game because this is incredibly your shit.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly my shit, shockingly. And so I just wanted to hear more about why found footage, and also, are you a found footage person? Do you like found footage movies, and kind of just your relationship with found footage and having it in the game?
I definitely have liked the found footage movies that I've seen. I think the first one I saw was the original Cloverfield movie. And I remember really liking that, and it made an impression on me.
It's a good one.
I made, when I was in high school, I made some crappy videos with my friends. And one of the movies we made was a found footage one. So I had done that before, I guess, in a really amateur capacity.
What was the premise of the found footage movie?
Okay, all right. Let me try to... Okay, so it starts off where we're in my basement, and then I say to my friend that we're going to go out to the park nearby, and we're going to capture footage of a monster. And then person who's holding the camera looks at me, and then I start putting on a mask, and then I say, but it's actually a trick because there's no monster, of course, but there's a guy at school who's going to pay $20 for this footage, so I'm going to wear it and then get the money. So then we go to the park, and then I'm in the mask stomping around, and then what happens, I'm butchering it because there's 2 twists. There's one where there's one monster, and then it's... Oh, yeah, right. So I'm stomping... This is terrible. So I'm stomping around, and then another person with a mask runs in and scares us both, right? And that was the person who paid the $20, and it turned out to be to scare us. And then he picks up the camera and goes, oh, that was so worth $20. And then there's a lion's roar monster sound effect, and then he screams, and then it cuts out, and then supposedly that's the real monster. Anyway,
that's
if that made any sense.
Okay, that's kind of incredible, though. I do love that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
That's amazing.
Do you have it still? Can we release it?
I do have it on I have all those videos that we made private on Facebook, because they're just really, really bad and embarrassing. So I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day. But
That's amazing.
I'm glad
so
you
that was
still have it, though.
Yeah.
You just have the memory for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I did that.
And then back to the present, I guess. It just seemed like it just kind of made sense as this idea to tell this overarching story of this character that was experiencing the same game that the player was. I think just the found footage just made sense. I can't remember exactly why I did that. I really like, I had been experimenting for a few games actually with the idea of using like just video footage in a game in interesting ways, because I had done that at the very end of the Hex a little bit in a few spaces, and then I had done actually for the DreadX collection, my entry involved that, so I was kind of just interested in exploring that more.
Cool.
The first thing that really grabbed me about the game was from the very opening when you load up the game and you can't do new game.
Oh yeah.
And you have to hit continue. And so from that moment, I was like, it makes this feeling like you are playing something that someone else had started.
Yeah.
And that raises the question of like, if someone else started it, what happened to them?
Yeah.
And so you have like this initial layer of this sort of like, oh gosh, I am playing something. If you let your mind go away with it, I am playing something that is like potentially dangerous. And then I love that the found footage aspect of it, where then you start to see that the main character found this disc out in the wilderness. And there's something like, it brings me back to, because I was raised on VHS and beta, and there's something, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, there's something really scary sometimes about grabbing like a VHS tape that's unmarked or unnamed, and you sort of put it in your machine and watch it, because you don't know what you're going to get. You could get something horrifying, you get some home videos, you get some porn, you could get everything like sort of mixed together in one kind of weird ass conglomeration.
Has that ever
You don't
happened?
know what you're getting. Yeah. Yes, it has. And so like it brought back that memory of like being a kid and popping in a video cassette and not knowing what you're going to get. And I love that a game that I downloaded on Steam can like emulate that feeling. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely was trying to shoot for that. I think with all three of my major games, just surprise is just a big part of it that I enjoy putting into it. And it's something I enjoy for myself too. I don't really want to know the entirety of what I'm getting into when I start something. It's less interesting for me personally. So it's definitely intentional.
Are you a big Magic the Gathering person?
Yeah, that's pretty much why I did this. Yeah, I mean...
So my fiance and I play Magic the Gathering, and actually, I don't think you can see it behind me, but we have a whole whiteboard of deck planning.
Nice.
My fiance has an entire whiteboard, and the desk next to me is covered in Magic cards. So we were playing this, and I was like, oh, okay, I know how to play Magic, so I get how this works. And like my fiance is having the best time, so... I was curious. I figured you were, but I wanted to triple check because I was like, this is so cool. I love deck building. So it was just a really cool way of like that twist on deck building games. Yeah,
it was definitely like I was drawing from my experience playing Magic, like the game, but also kind of the culture around it too. I was drawing from like
pack opening. I was like, yep. The pack opening videos and like all that stuff. Yeah,
and some of the personalities, like especially the robot character PO3, like I've gotten multiple people say like I know a person like that who plays Magic. Like there's a certain type of player if you go to your local game store to play, which unfortunately you can't do at the moment. Who you'll pretty much guarantee to find a PO3 among them. So it's
What's your favorite color to play in Magic, or like what's the current one you like to play the most?
Sorry,
Terry. I'm just curious.
I love Magic too.
That's right.
Probably like blue green or blue red, like those weird combinations that have blue in them.
Yeah. Cool.
Especially in recent years, they've really leaned into that, like as blue green being like this mad scientist combo.
I love it. Yeah, I love creature decks out of green. I like building like aquatic horror decks out of green and blue.
Yeah.
See, I was like an OG Magic player back in the day when it first started coming out.
Unfortunately, it was even more nerdy to play Magic.
Yes. And me and my friends would gather around at like study hall. We would go to the library to like study, and then we'd hide in a table in the back and play Magic. And I would always play like the black deck. I would always be
Me
like
too.
the vampires. I made vampires.
I love
so
vampire
the Sengir
decks.
vampires were big at that time, and Baron Sengir was like my favorite card. I had him like in plastic wrap, and I would put proxies in the cards. I didn't want to bend him. He was like, and so like this brought back the memories of that, especially with like the sacrifice kind of idea. Although in Magic you're getting it back, but here you're like literally sacrificing squirrels, which I just thought was so fantastic.
Yeah.
Terry, you should play Crimson Vow. It's the new. It's like a vampire set that just came out.
Oh, is it?
You still care about Magic? Yes.
Man, I'll tell you what. I came back because my brother still plays it. He's 8 years younger than me, and he still plays it. And he's tried to get me back into it, and I'm just like, what the hell do these cards do? Because there's like cards that have like pluses and minuses, and they move up and down, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
Where's my Sengir vampire?
It's a lot.
That just fly,
Yeah.
And that's like the big thing.
And every set, there's some newfangled mechanic, so they just add up. If you looked at like one card from each set over the years, you'd be completely mind blown. Like
I was. Okay. One of the other questions I really had about your game design ethos in particular, because after I played this game, I downloaded Pony Island, and I'm in the middle of playing it right now, and I haven't gotten to the Hex yet, but I got them all. And what I noticed particularly as I started playing this game and then went back to Pony Island is the way that you like to play with kind of fourth wall breaking moments. And I'm thinking in particular I don't want to talk too much about spoilers because people might be playing Inscryption, but there's a moment where your game searches your hard drive and holds like a file hostage. And then there's a moment where like my Steam friends all of a sudden were cards and they're fighting me. And I'm just, where does all this inspiration come from like breaking that fourth wall and being kind of like meta in your examination of video games, the art of video games? I
think it's just something that I find interesting and exciting when it happens to me in games. I recently played a smaller game on itch.io called One Shot, where and it does some cool things where one of the things it does is it knows your name because it knows your Windows username, but it presents it really well. It just starts calling you it. It doesn't like do some like lead up to like hype it up or anything. It's just like, hey, Daniel. And you're like, holy shit. And then it does another trick where it puts a file in your documents folder, and then it says you have to search through the documents. And then it gives more hints because you're probably not going to figure it out from that. But then you find this like, and it's not just that they put any file. It's like a creepy, like glitchy looking file name. And then like when you open it up, it's got like crazy like ASCII symbols to like mask the text. Anyway, so I just like to see that stuff. I just think it just is cool. And so if I have ideas like that, I just think, oh, it would be cool if, and then I do it. And I like to use as much as I can of the platform that I'm on too. So if I'm on Steam, I want to see what I can get out of Steam. Like it's this friends list. I think that's why I did that in Pony Island. So yeah, I just find it interesting.
And also, one final thing, what surprised me after I finished Inscryption and I went to Wikipedia and I was looking up information about it, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing that there's a ARG that's like being played out, and I'm like, what? And I fell down a rabbit hole. There's someone that has like compiled an entire Google Doc of the steps that they went through. Yes, exactly. And I was like going down this, reading this, I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. And I was surprised at how in depth it went, and that it sounds as if there was actually like a game hidden somewhere.
It kind of is a game in itself, I guess. It's kind of like a community experience. That's how I look at it. It's like a one-time community experience. And like, I even started to realize it was partially almost performance art, because I didn't plan on doing the thing where I went to meet the players in the woods. I don't know if you read that part of the guide.
I did, yes.
Like that was unplanned, unscripted. But then I kind of tried to like roll it into the experience. And then I'm thinking for the next one that I do for the next game, I'm going to lean into that more and have this performance art aspect to it and see what happens.
That's so amazing. It brought me back to, this is always like for ARGs, because that's the one I was heavily involved with. It brought me back to 9 Inch Nails when they were doing Year Zero back in the early 2000s, and just sort of like the way that USBs would pop up at concerts and sort of rabbit hole people would go down with that aspect of it. And I love when I'm usually never like smart enough to get involved with it, but I always love reading about it, particularly afterwards, and going, wow, all the kind of community aspect of it is just, and it feels perfect to Inscryption too, which is all about sort of like breaking out of the mold of being just a typical computer game.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear that they were doing that like in the early 2000s, you said?
Yeah, this was around their album Year Zero, and they were leaving like USB things that had like this loud like shh sound in it, and people put it through like audio like visualizers, and it was like a hand, and then it like led to coordinates, and there was like this whole mythology that they had built behind it, and it's I think it was actually made by the same people that did is it We Love Bees or We Are Bees that Halo 2 did an ARG for back in that day? Yeah. Oh, it's just fascinating stuff.
Really cool.
I love.
Look into that.
I
later.
love reading about ARGs.
Cool.
Yeah, Wikipedia has a really good entry on it. If you're ever interested with the Year Zero, they have like a good history about the ARG.
Cool.
But I love them. And I was so fascinated to find out that this is like the game ends and no, there's a whole other story that's going on. And I just love it when things do that.
Okay. So Daniel, we've chatted about your horror past and your current work, but what movie did you bring with you today for us to talk about?
So I don't think many people would consider this a horror movie, but my film that I remember most disturbing as a child was James and the Giant Peach.
Hell yeah. So James and the Giant Peach is about an orphan who lives with his two cruel aunts. He befriends anthropomorphic bugs who live inside a giant peach, and they embark on a journey to New York City. So
they
Daniel,
sure do.
What did you? I want to hear about the first time you watched this, why you considered it disturbing, why you picked it as your scarred for life movie.
Yeah, so I must have been pretty young because I have a very hazy memory of it. Like, so I went back and looked, and it came out in 96. And I was born in 92, and I remember I saw it on VHS. So it must have been 97 at least. So I must have been like around 5 or maybe 6. I don't know. But I just remember I don't think I was even able to finish it. It just something about the bugs and probably the centipede, especially now that after going back to it, just found it so unsettling and disturbing. And then I remembered it for like, I think years after, and to this day as just this feeling of wrongness. Like it's just something grotesque about them. And I associated it. Like if something went wrong with my life or it didn't make sense, then I might like associate it with like in some way with that freaky centipede or the bugs in it. I don't know why, but it wigged me out. And when I went back and looked at it now, I don't find it very scary, but I can kind of see why, but I don't know.
So you don't think you finished it?
I don't think I finished it. I mean, but then again, I don't remember. I didn't even, when I went back, I didn't even remember that it had the live action part before the bugs. I just remember the bugs.
I think all of us were the same. Like, I definitely totally fucking forgot that. I thought I clicked the wrong movie for a hot second. I was like, wait, why is there a real boy? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
But I saw this. I honestly couldn't remember anything about this movie when I know I saw it, but I couldn't remember anything. I do remember the trailer though, because the trailer was in like on every Disney VHS from that age. I was born in 93, so I was a similar age of like had the Disney VHS tapes, and that ad would play before it. And I always remember the bag of glowworms or the alligator tongues, but like the glowworm bag and the fucking centipede, like doing that weird little thing where he jumps. It's just like his legs and then he like puts his whole body up.
Yeah.
Is that me? Like it just, that movement kind of like wigged me out a little bit. And like the thought of giant bugs also was kind of freaking me out. And it because it's the same guy who did Nightmare Before Christmas that, and I love that movie, but the animation, the claymation style is really uncomfortable. It's both like kind of cute, but also something very horrific. Like they're not finished, or like the angles on their faces are weird and their faces don't quite make sense. So they look like a little scary when they're not meant to be scary, but like they definitely have a weird vibe around them that's like, I know you're nice, but something about you feels unsafe.
Yeah. It's Uncanny Valley, the movie.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's very
like
much
all of the,
Valley.
Especially when he turns you have the live action kid James, and then he turns into the stop motion animation, and he looks off. The bugs look off. The spider, like what really
spider.
Here's the thing.
Spiders.
Here's the thing you don't know about me, Daniel. This whole podcast kind of started on my end because of thinking about Arachnophobia, the movie, and that is my scarred for life moment. I don't do spiders. I don't do spiders on television. I don't do spiders in real life. I don't do spiders on a picture. I can't do spiders. And so the moment I'm watching this movie and the live action, I was like, first of all, I was like, oh gosh, there's live action. I was like, how much of this movie is live action? And then the spider comes down. I was like, fucking hell, why is it always spiders in this goddamn podcast? Because it's been like, I think this is the fourth time.
Oh no.
Probably the fourth time that it's like surprise spider that I'm not prepared for. And I was
like,
there
was a spider. Oh, you had never seen this before, right?
I thought I had saw this movie. I thought I had seen it. And it's probably because, as you said, Mary Beth, the how prolific the trailer was in front of like Disney things, because back then on VHS in particular, you would have to fast forward through it, otherwise you would sit through them because there's no skipping. And so I would typically sit through those trailers, and I feel like I honestly had thought I had saw this, and I watched this movie and I was like, I don't remember anything about this movie whatsoever.
You forgot about the beret wearing spider with a horrific accent.
Susan Sarandon, come on. Her accent, is she French? Is she Russian? Is she trying to be Vlad the Impaler? Like, what is going on here with her accent?
So funny.
But that's what kind of cued me in on like the Uncanny Valley, because I had to do a double take on her eyes, because she has eyes and then there's eyes inside of her eyes. And that was like creepy. That kind of freaked me out even as an adult, just seeing those little two eyes inside the actual bigger eyes. I was like, no. Yeah. Why are they friends with the spider?
I think it could have been even like when I definitely, the image I remember most is when they're up on the peach in like the bright the light of day. But then when I was rewatching it, I saw like the introduction to the insects where they have like glowing eyes and it's like inside the peach and it's very dark. Maybe that started to wig me out, and then I only lasted a bit longer or something as a kid before I like turned it off. But I don't know.
I also thought, I don't know, I misremembered. I know the peach got big, but I guess I didn't realize that the bugs, for some reason I thought he went into the peach and he was bug sized.
Right,
I don't know why that is what I remembered, but I think I never wanted to imagine giant bugs. I think that might have been part of it. But when they're like, you're giant bugs, and at the end when the bugs are in like the newspaper, I'm like, oh my god, they are huge. Like they are human bugs. Like what the fuck? I cannot conceive of this in my brain. Like if I saw a human sized centipede, I would shit my pants. Terry would leave his body if he saw a human spider. Terry would just cease to, like, he would disappear.
I am also
tapping out, guys.
I'm really sorry for the random spider in Inscryption.
Yes,
because every once in a while,
like a friend.
Yeah,
you just like crawl across the table.
I'm hoping it's not as bad because it's not very detailed, but I guess it's still.
See, that's the thing, is that like if it's real, I can't handle it. If it's fake and CG, like that moment startled me, but I was okay with it. But like the beginning of this movie, just like I couldn't watch it. I literally was sitting there just.
When he holds the spider in his hand.
Oh yeah, right.
Girl, that's asking being bitten. No.
Aww.
You'd be like the ants.
Yes, I was like, they know what's what. They're like, kill it. The beast is in the house. I'm like, yes, nuke it, burn it from space, get rid of it. No more spider. And they're living with this thing when it's big. And I'm like, this spider could just easily web you up when you're asleep. And he is allowing her to like web him into her web. I'm like, are you crazy, kid?
Speaking of the aunts, they're horrific. Like,
oh, they so are.
Roald Dahl hates parental figures. Like, I love Roald Dahl, and my family are big Roald Dahl people. And for those of you unfamiliar, he did Matilda. He did Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He did The Witches. So he did a lot of stuff that is very much like kids having the bad parental figures or trying to escape bad parental figures through fantasy. And Good God, I hate them. Like, I forgot about them a little bit, because I forgot the parents got eaten by a rhinoceros, which is fucking horrific. Like, that image of the clouds and the rhino.
Yeah.
That line, I was like, excuse me? Because I even wrote it down. One day a terrible thing happened. An angry rhinoceros appeared out of nowhere and gobbled up his poor mother and father. I was like, excuse me? Yeah. What just happened?
It seemed like it was almost being told from the perspective of the ants, and it was like supposed to be a lie, like unreal. It's
interesting though, Mary Beth, that you bring up the kind of his Dahl's like relationship with parents, because I did find an article on BBC where I think it was someone that was maybe writing an autobiography or a biography about him. And he was talking about how he lost his father young, and then his mother sent him away to boarding school where he was viciously beaten. And so those sadistic parents in his fiction are a reframing of his own experience. And so I think he has a lot of like the trauma in terms of being abandoned by parents.
Yeah. I was wondering about that trope, because it's in his works, but also like it seemed more common around that time. Like if you think about Harry Potter, there's a similar dynamic. And like it seems like you don't see that as much anymore. Like it's this kind of like whimsical version of child abuse that they're depicting. It's not like, but it's like, it's in this whimsical world. It's like, it's so weird, but like, it is, if you like looked at it straight, it'd be like horrendous, but somehow they make it so it's like kind of funny and like, but it's like, you don't really see that much these days, do you? Or am I just not seeing like what kids are watching? Like,
I don't think so. Like, I'm trying to think, 'cause like I have younger cousins and stuff and like watch things with them, but I think they've kind of moved away from the child abuse thing and like more like kids who have like loving families but experience trauma, which is like kind of like just as bad, just in a very different way. But like watching this, I was like, this is so horrific as like child abuse. And it was interesting because like when I was a kid, I'd watch it and, you know, you hate those characters as a kid, but I watch it now as an adult and I get mad at the adults as like someone who I guess I have weird feminine parental urges sometimes because that's who I am as a woman in my late 20s. But I just want to fucking punch them. Like this poor kid. Yeah. Like I just want to hold him and cradle him and tell him he is so sweet and he can eat. Like they don't let him eat.
Yeah, that was.
And it just made me very upset. Like I don't think anybody upset. It's not like a huge like unique reaction, but it was just like a very different kind of anger watching it this time, which was interesting.
Like very bleak. Like they say they ate his dinner. They try to give him rotten fish heads, and then he has to steal an empty bag of chips, and he eats like chip crumbs, and then licks the bag. Like that's dark. And this was 4 kids, right? And like it does seem like it would ever be made and presented that way today.
Well, and I think that the original script that was turned in, because so. People at Disney had wanted to make this film for a long time, particularly back in the 80s. But Disney back then was like, "Ooh, no, this is too weird and bizarre and dark for us to release." Even though they're releasing things like Black Cauldron and a bunch of other stuff at that time, so it's weird to me. There's like a dichotomy there. And then they got the rights in 1992, and they had so they had hired a guy named Dennis Potter to write the original script, and they turned it down because it was too dark and weird for them. And in his script, for instance, the shark, the really gnarly robotic shark, was a Nazi.
Whoa.
So there is like an edginess to this story before they kind of Disney-fied it and toned it down a little bit. I think the aunts in the original script were supposed to be smashed because they were killed in the book. I believe they were supposed to be smashed.
They were hit by the peach when it gets detached. They are run over by the peach.
Yeah, and so that was one area I think that they toned down. I believe that the things that they kept from this Dennis Potter script was the dialogue from the caterpillar. His dialogue. They kept that because it was a little sardonic.
Right.
But there is a darkness here that I still think kind of shines through. I was thinking as I was watching this, I again was surprised at how much live action there is in the beginning. But even the live action part where it's supposed to be sort of like James's happiness before he gets taken away, it's all fake. Like it's so artificial. It's like they have like a fake beach and the cliff behind them is, you can tell that it's like paper. The lighthouse, like everything about this is sort of fabricated in a way that makes it feel not real. So even the moments that are real have a very surreal quality to them that really like stuck with me this time as watching it.
It's got Tim Burton vibes. You know what I mean? Like it does have those like Tim Burton like people, but exaggerated, like especially with the aunts, like their features are very like their cheekbones, especially with the taller aunt, Spiker, like she kind of has much more like defined cheeks, and it feels kind of like a live action Tim Burton movie. And like I know he produced this movie and Henry Selick directed it, but still it kind of had that vibe of like a fantasy world ish, like everything was just a little bit heightened and looks a little bit more fabricated. I agree that even the part with his parents was kind of disturbing in a way. It was like so like saccharine sweet that it was like almost a mockery. Like it was and then when you get to the end, I kind of thought the ending was dark too, because, and I might be reading a little bit too much into this, but I think there's a parallel between how the movie ends and with the way the ants treated the peach. Yeah. Because like, so the aunts, they see the giant pumpkin or the giant peach, and their first thought is to parade it. Yeah. I keep thinking, every time I was watching this, I kept thinking it was a pumpkin. I don't know why. Maybe it was the little gnarly thing on top or whatever. But so their first thought is to parade it about town and to sell tickets to it. Right. And so they put it on display as an object to be stared at. And then when James ends up in New York, and the people have devoured the peach down to its core, they turn the core into his house and they put him up in Central Park. But then he like is being paraded about for a bunch of people. Like the last scene we've seen of him is him sitting in front of his house, and there's a whole crowd of people listening to his story. And it's almost as if like he has become the peach. He has become the thing that people are coming to stare at and gawk at because his story is so wild. And now there's giant bugs. And it just, I don't know. There's a little bit of a kind of darkness to that ending that is, I think, being presented as something happy, because he has like his chosen family now. He has like his spider for a mom, which is creepy to me, and a caterpillar for a dad, which is also creepy to me. But like, he's living in Central Park where everyone can come at any time they want to like gawk at him. And I think that's really kind of creepy. Yeah.
Maybe I did see the whole thing as a kid, and it just left a subconscious memory of all that extra stuff that I don't remember now. But yeah, it really is all the way through. It's disturbing.
Again, it's like all of Roald Dahl's stuff is so dark. Like, again, there's a lot of chosen family, like Matilda, at least the movie, like she picks Miss Honey, her teacher, as her new parents, but like it's kind of sad watching her parents sign the adoption papers. And Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, like he wins, but at what cost? All those kids die? Question mark. And it's just like... It's just like, but I love that. I love it when people write kids stuff but make them really dark. And I think that's why like I love some of the things I do now, is because I was drawn to that like dark fantasy child kind of thing that was like mostly happy but had twinges of something else going on. Yeah. And this, I think that definitely happens with this, like very much happens with this movie. I mean, that crazy shark, skeletons, all of the horrible...
The skeletons. The skeletons that almost draw and quarter the centipede. I was like, what? How is this in a kid's movie? Because at first I thought, oh God, are they going to keel haul him? Because that is also a very vicious way that pirates used to kill people.
Tell me more about that.
Oh, keel hauling? It's where they would take a person and they'd tie a rope on them, and they would throw the rope over the other side of the boat, and they would pull him under, like across the keel that typically had barnacles on it and growths and stuff, and it would basically shred them as they were pulled across the keel of the boat.
No good.
Yeah. Just shred the skin right off of them if they live. And so I thought that's what they were doing here originally. Not that being drawn and quartered is any better, but the fact that they're like going to pull him in half, I was like, oh my God, that got really dark really quick.
Imagine if they did that and he just like ripped off his exoskeleton. That would have been horrendous.
I also forgot or I guess I didn't forget because I never saw it before, but I was surprised at how punny this movie is. There are so many puns that made me actually laugh.
Yeah.
I have 2 half-brothers now. I love the worm. I love the worm. The little friend.
Yeah, or the when the centipede jumps off the boat to go to the skeletons and they're like, he committed pesticide.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that one made me laugh, and I don't honestly know why, because it's so dumb. Or the joke about the skeletons can't play music in church because they have no organs. Like, just, I don't know. It's just that kind of stuff just like really tickled my funny bone this time.
But like those are those lines too that as a kid you don't really get. You know what I mean? Like you watch that as an adult and you're like, oh, I love the little humor things they put in there. Like that gives the adults a chuckle because not all kids are going to catch like the kind of verbal funny humor in those movies.
Yeah, I've noticed that in like Pixar stuff too. It's like it's so clearly there's like they know there's 2 audiences here, and here's for one audience and here's for the other, and then we're trying to do both.
Well, and like the thing that I love about this movie, another thing I love about this movie is the animation style. Like I've touched on that before because it's got that obviously like the Nightmare Before Christmas vibe, but just like the intricacy of this movie and the sets, like when they catch the seagulls and they fly the peach into the air and there's that beautiful shot of them flying through the clouds and the peach with the seagulls in the net. And like, it's just the scope of this movie is so impressive for what it is, for like the kind of the animation style and like the stop motion. Like that is just always so impressive to me that they're able to create something that vast and that detailed in that way. Like it just blows my mind that is something people create on, like, I don't know. It's just like, holy shit. Every bit of that was like moved by a person.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the animation. I was wondering if either of you had seen the Netflix film The House that came out this year.
No, it's on my list.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw it just came out. I've heard good things about it though.
Yeah, I saw it recently and I really liked it. It just seemed relevant because it is also stop motion, a little bit of a different style. It's all made with felt. And it actually has some things in common with James and the Giant Peach, I'd say, like a certain tone and just the like inherent disturbingness of all the models in it that are used. Like I think if I had seen that one as a kid, it would have had the same effect, possibly.
The trailers make it look mildly creepy.
Yeah, I'd say it's more than mildly creepy. It's pretty. There's a part there. It's like 3 short stories, and the end of the second one is actually just like extremely disturbing. I'll just end with a recommendation of that since you both haven't watched it. But
yeah, it's been on my list. Yeah. I definitely wanted to check it out. So it came out at a bad time.
Yeah.
With Sundance and all this kind of stuff. It's like I don't have time to watch movies for fun right now. But I'm definitely going to. I'm glad you brought that up because it's been in the back of my mind. But okay, the stop motion thing. I think Henry Selick is not given enough credit because, in particular, contrary to popular belief, Tim Burton did not direct Nightmare Before Christmas. He did. And he did the stop motion for that. And then he did James and the Giant Peach. And then he directed Monkey Bone, which I don't think I've ever seen, but isn't that the one with, yeah, it's the one with Brandon Fraser is in it.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
And so he did that. And then he also did Coraline, which is a movie we've discussed on the podcast before. He directed Coraline. And there was at time, I don't know if it's still happening, there's that video game Little Nightmares. He was supposedly making a television series based off of it. Stop motion. Huh. That was like announced in like 2017, but I haven't heard anything about it since. So I don't know if it ever is going to come to be because you never know with movies. But he did that, and now he also has an upcoming thing for Netflix called Wendell and Wild, and it's going to star Key and Peele, and it's stop motion.
Oh, I'm so stoked
I love the
for
sound
that.
of that. Yeah.
So like he's done all of this stuff with stop motion, and I don't know. He doesn't get the same name recognition, I don't think, as a lot of other people making that kind of animated stuff, even though a lot of people have seen his movies.
Is there anything else we want to touch on before we wrap up and give this our rating out of 5?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Terry. How many cigar smoking centipedes / the thing that scarred Daniel the most as a child do you give James and the Giant Peach out of 5?
Okay, I went into this not really expecting a whole lot outside of how nice the animation would look. I was really surprised at how much of this is actually in live action, because I think it's like 20 minutes at the beginning, and then the last like maybe 10 minutes of a hour and 20 movie is a lot of live action. So that took me aback. But I think that the way that he is able to tap into childhood fears, and the way that this movie kind of presents a not so nice look at like kids animation and kids like stories and like tall tales. Like, I think that this is a really, really actually well done movie. I actually would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the stop motion, because I think he is so talented when it comes to that kind of stuff. So for me, I think I'm going to unfortunately cut that centipede in half and give it 3.5 cigar smoking centipedes out of 5. What about you, Mary Beth?
I think I am going to keep my centipedes whole and give it 4 centipedes. I think like that that little half segment is mostly nostalgia for me, and like kind of what this movie was for me as a kid, and like that kind of omnipresence it had. Like, even if I only saw it once, like the trailer haunted me. So, and I was so excited to go back and visit it from, an adult point of view, to get the jokes and just really appreciate how beautiful it is. Because, as a kid, you don't always appreciate how incredible things are like that. And so it was nice to kind of get, escape back into those kinds of worlds that are a little bit dark, but really fantastical and just like really entertaining. So it's 4 for me. Daniel, you have the final word. How many cigar smoking centipedes?
Yeah, I think I was also going to give it 4 cigar smoking centipedes. It is visually really impressive. It has like a pervasive mood and tone throughout that like leaves a mark on you clearly. Yeah, I mean, I guess if I had one criticism, and I don't even know if it's a fair one, it's just it feels the live action stuff feels pretty dated. I mean, those little miniature sets are quite cool, and I think those really stand up and are interesting, but some of it just feels so of its time in a way that not every movie from then does. Like it maybe was using like tropes or styles at the time that leaning into those a little much. But it was cool. So I'm 4 centipedes.
Hell yeah. The one thing that just triggered my mind after you're talking about the live action thing is the fact that the actor that played James, Paul Terry, he didn't really do much after James and the Giant Peach. He has like 4 credits to his name. One of them, weirdly enough, is the Lady Gaga music video "Marry the Night."
What?
Sarah did not think that was what's going to come out of your mouth.
I'm gonna look that up after.
I actually, as soon as I saw that, I went and watched the 14-minute music video, and I couldn't recognize him in there. There's a lot of dancers in it, so I don't know if he's like, I don't know. But apparently, according to IMDb, he is in that. And that was the last thing he did in 2011. And he is now like, I think he has a degree in like chemistry, and I think he's a teacher.
That's cool.
And he's like completely left the film industry. But like, it's wild to me because you see him, and he was definitely like giving his all in this performance, both as, the live action, the voice, and the singing. And then to kind of see that after that, he did like some kind of short-lived 2 years TV series called Micro Soap. I don't know what that is. And then literally the Lady Gaga music video, and that's it.
Good for him.
Yeah,
it is kind of strange. So he was an adult at that point, and like he left. He got his chemistry degree, started teaching, and then he got pulled back in for the Lady Gaga video of all things. Like,
I guess of all things. And I was trying to find like interviews to see like if he had talked about it, and every single thing I found that had like, because there's a couple. One, in fact, Flickering Myth did an interview with him in 2021 about being famous and leaving it, and like leaving it all behind and everything. We can link that in the show notes. But it's it's always wild to me when you see like a child actor, and then that might be their only credit, because you typically think of child actors being like, Drew Barrymore, or like, the Olsen twins, or all of that kind of stuff, going through and becoming like bigger and bigger, and maybe branching out to different entertainment. But this guy just left the whole field.
It's like, bye, getting out while I'm ahead. No more of
weird.
this.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us to talk about your fantastic game and also James and the Giant Peach. Where can our listeners find you, and what do you have to plug or talk about?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think the link that I usually give is just for my Twitter, which is D Mullins Games on Twitter, because there's a link to my site from there, and you could pretty much find anything starting there. I guess as far as plugging anything, Inscryption, obviously. I mean, we've talked enough about that. I'm releasing an expansion for it somewhat soon. It's in beta right now. Yeah, anyone can play it right now, but it's not fully done yet.
Hell yeah.
Awesome.
All right, listeners. You've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with James and the Giant Peach and Inscryption? We're curious because we've been telling you to play it for multiple weeks now. Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Somebody please think of the Somebody please think of the children! Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is the briefing room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.